ICE arrested at least 12 people during this week's operation around the cities, and nearly half of those detained are originally from Somalia. And for the first time, we're hearing from the wife of one of the men arrested, and she is pushing back on ICE's claims that he is an active gang member.
We executed the largest fentanyl bust in the history of the U.S.
The encryption cracked at 3:11 in the morning. A single file loaded first. Not a spreadsheet, not a ledger, a photograph. Police Chief Amina Hassan, in full uniform, badge visible, department-issued sidearm holstered, seated at a long dinner table surrounded by the 6 known leaders of the Red Dune Syndicate. She is laughing. There are bottles of champagne. There are men in that photograph with active federal warrants, and Chief Hassan's hand is raised, holding a glass, in a toast. The FBI analyst who opened that file didn't speak for 40 seconds. Then she picked up the phone and said 4 words to her supervisor, "You need to see this." This moment ended a 19-month investigation. Here's how it started.
The Somalians should be out of here. Somalia is considered by many to be the worst country on earth.
2:53 a.m. Minneapolis, Minnesota. The temperature outside was 22 degrees. The city was asleep. But inside a nondescript federal building on the eastern edge of downtown, 97 analysts, agents, and federal prosecutors had not slept in 31 hours. Operation Iron Threshold, a joint FBI, D, and ICE task force, was about to detonate across 3 states simultaneously. Here's what was at stake. $9.3 billion in laundered cartel cash flowing through the Midwest's financial bloodstream. 42 front businesses, nightclubs, currency exchange houses, luxury car dealerships, stretching from Minneapolis to Chicago to Columbus, Ohio. And at the center of all of it, a decorated Metropolitan Police commander who had spent 11 years as the most publicly trusted law enforcement figure in the state. But here's what no one outside that federal building knew yet. Why had every single FBI DEA joint raid in the Minneapolis metro area failed for the past 3 years? Suspects gone before agents arrived. Evidence conveniently misplaced. Witnesses suddenly recanting. Who authorized the 47-minute gap in body camera footage the night the Red Dune Syndicate's last rival was eliminated on a residential street? What was the Thornwood account? A single encrypted financial destination receiving wire transfers from 11 different ghost shell companies, and whose name was on the signature card. And perhaps most chilling of all, why did the Red Dune Syndicate's internal communications seized 3 months earlier refer to someone called the Shield? Someone inside law enforcement. Someone they weren't afraid of. Someone they owned. The answers were coming. All of them. But first, the breach. Keep watching. Because what they found in the first 10 minutes of those raids rewrote everything. 4:17 a.m. 8 FBI breach teams, 4 ICE strike units, and 3 DEA tactical squads hit 11 locations across Minneapolis simultaneously. Flashbangs lit the pre-dawn darkness like artificial lightning. Front doors vanished off their frames. Agents in black tactical gear moved building to building like water. Fast, deliberate, silent until they weren't. A nightclub in the North Loop district. Its basement converted into a cash-counting operation running 7 nights a week. A riverfront warehouse storing 40-foot containers logged as frozen food imports. A chain of 3 money service businesses in South Minneapolis, storefronts by day, syndicate clearing houses by night. And buried inside a gated residential compound in a quiet suburb 16 miles from city center. A structure that did not appear on any city permit, any utility record, or any zoning file. A hidden facility. Off every grid. Inside that compound, agents found 1 tons of cocaine, 890,000 fentanyl pills vacuum sealed in pharmaceutical-grade packaging, $47 million in physical cash sorted and bundled by denomination, 38 military-grade assault rifles, 9 rocket-propelled grenade launchers, and, stored separately in a climate-controlled interior room, 3 encrypted servers still running, still broadcasting, still connected to a live external network. But the first major discovery wasn't the drugs. It wasn't the weapons. It was a laminated binder left open on a table inside the compound's operations room. Inside, a rotating schedule of Minneapolis Police Department patrol routes, shift change times, and radio frequencies updated as recently as 48 hours earlier. Someone with direct access to the department's internal dispatch system had been handing this information to the Red Dune Syndicate in real time. For how long? Investigators didn't know yet, but they were about to find out. If you think that's disturbing, the next discovery doesn't just change this case. It changes what you think you know about how a city operates. Stay with me. 6 hours later, FBI Cyber Command. Quantico, Virginia. The 43 seized servers were cracked open digitally within 90 minutes of arrival. What materialized on the analysts' screens wasn't just a criminal ledger. It was a financial architecture. Sophisticated, deliberate, elegant in a way that made experienced forensic accountants physically uncomfortable. The Red Dune Syndicate wasn't hiding money in mattresses. They were cycling it through a network of 17 registered LLCs, event management companies, commercial real estate holding firms, a non-profit youth sports foundation, all incorporated legally, all generating audited tax returns, all connected by a single digital spine that fed into one master account, the Thornwood account. Analysts traced it within 4 hours. The account was registered to a property development company. That company had received $9.3 billion in aggregate wire transfers over 6 years from 11 cartel-controlled shell entities across 3 countries. And the sole authorized signatory on that account, verified by 2 independent forensic accountants and confirmed by federal subpoena records at 8:44 that morning, was Amina Hassan. Not through a proxy, not through a relative. Her name, her signature, her account. One analyst, a 28-year-old forensic CPA on her 3rd federal case, leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling for a full minute. Her supervisor asked if she was all right. She said, "I just need to understand how someone wears a badge and does this." That's when the second open loop cracked open. The encrypted photograph. Hassan at the syndicate dinner. Agents had already found the date stamp on that photograph's metadata. It was taken 14 months before she was appointed police chief. She wasn't recruited after she got power. She was installed to gain it. But the chief wasn't working alone. The servers revealed a secondary access node. Someone with federal military grade clearance was providing encrypted logistical cover for the syndicate's Midwest transport routes. Pause for a second. Think about who in this story had both the clearance and the motive. The answer comes in 60 seconds. 5:23 a.m. Joint Task Force Command Center, Minneapolis. The digital map covering the far wall showed 44 red pulse markers scattered across Minnesota, Illinois, and Ohio. Each one a confirmed Red Dune Syndicate asset. Each one about to be seized. 1,100 federal agents. 58 SWAT teams. 14 Black Hawk helicopters. DIA tactical units from 4 regional divisions. ICE strike teams operating in 3 states. U.S. Army reconnaissance aircraft providing aerial surveillance across the Iowa-Illinois freight corridor. This wasn't a raid. It was a controlled demolition of an empire. In the next 4 hours, a Red Dune meth production facility outside Rockford, Illinois, producing 420 kilograms of methamphetamine weekly, was breached and destroyed. A luxury condominium tower in Columbus, Ohio, used as a cartel command node for the Eastern Distribution Network, was seized floor by floor. 11 currency exchange fronts across Minneapolis were simultaneously shut and locked. A human trafficking transit house in suburban St. Paul, disguised as a licensed group home, was entered by ICE agents who found 31 people inside, including 9 minors, all in severe medical distress. By noon, total seizures across all locations reached 8.7 tons of narcotics, $67 million in cash and financial instruments, 340 arrests across 3 states, 103 firearms, 16 armored vehicles, and 37 active Minneapolis Police Department officers taken into federal custody in front of their own precinct. Badge removals happening in real time. Handcuffs on people who swore an oath. The operation was working. The network was falling. And then, analysts cracked the final server partition. This next part, I need you to focus. Because this is where it stops being a crime story and becomes something else entirely. The final partition on server array 11 was protected behind a secondary encryption layer that took FBI Cyber Command 6 additional hours to defeat. Inside was a program. Automated. Preloaded. Triggered to activate the moment any device linked to Police Chief Hassan's biometric credentials went offline for more than 72 hours. Meaning the moment she was arrested and her phone was confiscated. A dead man's switch. If activated, it would automatically transmit to 12 encrypted external addresses. The full real identities, home addresses, undercover aliases, and active case files of 214 federal agents, DEA, FBI, and ICE, currently embedded in undercover operations across 6 states. Every single one of them would be burned. Every operation collapsed. Potentially, every agent in danger. Hassan had built a fail-safe, not to protect herself, to make herself untouchable. The federal prosecutor on the case looked at the screen, then looked at the task force director and said, "She doesn't think she can be arrested. She might be right." The servers didn't just contain the switch. They contained the network map. 23 Minneapolis Police Department officers on monthly syndicate payroll. Payments disguised as consulting fees from a real estate LLC. 7 Minnesota state border checkpoints with documented relaxation windows, gaps in inspection scheduling, timed precisely to Red Dune Syndicate freight convoys. 4 sitting civil court judges receiving cash transfers in exchange for evidence suppression rulings and case dismissals. 11 state legislators whose campaign finance records connected, through 4 degrees of separation, but connected, to Red Dune shell companies. This wasn't corruption. This was infrastructure. 1 deputy on the task force, 24 years on the job, 2 commendations for valor, watched his former precinct captain get walked out in handcuffs by federal marshals. He sat down on a curb outside. Didn't speak, just sat. A younger agent asked if he needed anything. He shook his head and said, "I vouched for that man. I vouched for him." The dead man's switch was neutralized at 11:47 p.m. by a federal cyber team using a classified override protocol. Amina Hassan was arrested at her home at 12:03 a.m. She said nothing. She looked at the arresting agents. And she smiled. Amina Hassan was formally indicted on 34 federal counts, including racketeering, money laundering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to distribute narcotics. 340 arrests finalized. The Red Dune Syndicate's Midwest operation, described by the federal prosecutor as the most sophisticated municipal corruption network in American history, was declared dismantled. Justice, it seemed, had been served. Or so they thought. Inside the seized compound's basement, in a room that took engineers 2 days to locate behind a false concrete wall, federal agents found something that had nothing to do with narcotics. A weapons cache. Not cartel weapons. Organized differently, labeled differently. Military-style inventory manifests, personnel rosters, training schedules, communication protocols, not a drug operations armory, an organizational structure, a private militia, 340 documented members, armed with military-grade equipment, and embedded, according to the personnel files found in that room, inside 3 separate Midwestern state police departments under cover of active employment. This was not a cartel operation. The Red Dune Syndicate wasn't just moving narcotics. They were constructing a parallel armed force inside law enforcement itself. And the records showed it had been operational for 4 years before a single federal agent knew it existed. They didn't just infiltrate the system. They were rebuilding it, one badge at a time. On the morning of Hassan's arraignment, a woman stood outside the federal courthouse in Minneapolis. She held a photograph of her son. He was 19 in the picture. Baseball cap. Bright smile. He died 14 months ago. A fentanyl pill, pressed to look exactly like a prescription painkiller, purchased from a Red Dune Syndicate street-level distributor 2 miles from his college campus. The medical examiner's toxicology report said his heart stopped in under 4 minutes. She didn't shout. She didn't hold a sign. She just held the photograph. and she stood there until the last federal vehicle drove away. In this state alone, 2,400 people died of overdoses last year. Federal investigators believe 61% of those deaths involved fentanyl traced to this network. 31 trafficking survivors are receiving care. Over 200 individuals are still unaccounted for. This is not just a crime story. This is a blueprint. It happened here. It is happening elsewhere. And sometimes, power doesn't need violence. Sometimes it only needs a badge, a signature, and the silence of everyone who looked away. If you made it this far, you're seeing what most people never look for. Tap like so this story reaches someone who needs to hear it. Comment Iron Threshold if this hit different. Share it with someone who still believes corruption only happens somewhere else. Because the Red Dune Syndicate, the Minneapolis Network, that was one chapter. The same blueprint, same shell company structures, same police infiltration method, same dead man switch architecture has been flagged in a city you would not expect. Different name, different faces, same system. That story is almost ready. And when it drops, it will be the one people are still talking about a year from now. Subscribe, because next time, the city surprises everyone.
बरस गुजरे यो अर्ज कर दी मेरी सुनी तू अज फरियाद अल्लाह दस दी महबूब प्यार रेदा भरे बाद नू करी तू बेशाद अल्लाह सच्ची ढूंढवाना माई है खाली पे हक सच तेरा इरशाद अल्लाह होश पाक महबूब प्यार दी है दिलशानू मलकल मौत पे जीते जदू तीर दा देर दीदार रब्बा होश पाक दा होवे दीदार हाज़र जदू मौत दी चाड़ से ओ मार रब्बा Subhanahu सच